Have you ever looked at the politics of two different democracies and just thought, what is going on here? In one country, it's all about the economy. In another, it feels like they're stuck fighting battles over history and identity. It's a disconnect that can honestly make you feel like you're living in a totally different reality. Well, today, we're going to pull back the curtain and unpack the hidden logic behind this whole thing.
It is such a frustrating puzzle, isn't it? You see one country where every single political debate is about inflation, jobs, housing prices, and then you look at another, and the entire conversation is completely consumed by arguments about the distant past or who belongs to what group. It just feels irrational. But what if it's not? What if, believe it or not, both sides are following a kind of hidden script?
And I mean, the contrast is just night and day. You take a country like Australia. The political battlefield there is almost entirely about material stuff. How much does a house cost? Is my paycheck keeping up with prices? But then you look at a democracy like India, and the headlines are so often dominated by caste, by religious identity, by historical memory. So what on earth explains this massive difference?
Now, the knee-jerk reaction here is to make some kind of moral judgment, right? To say that one country is just more rational or developed than the other. But that's totally the wrong way to look at this. The real answer has nothing to do with morality. It's all about structure. At the end of the day, politics simply follows the incentives laid out for it.
So to really get this, we've got to put on our political strategist hats for a minute. The goal of the game is to win. So let's actually explore the two different playbooks these democracies create by looking at what kind of behavior gets rewarded and what gets punished.
The key idea, the one that unlocks everything, is structural incentives. Just think of them as the invisible rules of the political game. They're these powerful forces that are baked right into a country's reality, and they're what makes some strategies a genius move and other ones a complete waste of time.
Okay, so take Australia. Politicians there are constantly talking about housing and wages. But it's not because they're somehow more noble. It's because the structural incentives literally force them to. Playing the identity politics card just doesn't really work there. You don't have a rigid caste system, religion isn't a huge dividing line, so what's left? The main way to get voters on your side is through their wallets. To win, you absolutely have to deliver on material issues. There's no other game in town.
Now let's flip that coin and look at a place like India, where the political incentives are just worlds apart. Here, the entire system is shaped by what we can call three structural locks. And these locks make identity politics not just an option, but often the most powerful, most effective strategy you can possibly use.
All right, lock number one, the incredible power of birth-based identity. We're talking about things like your caste or your religion. These are identities you're born into. They don't change over your lifetime, and crucially, they are incredibly strong predictors of how people vote. This creates this super stable, reliable base of support for politicians to tap into year after year.
And you have to understand, for a political operator, this is pure gold. I mean, think about it. Why would you spend 10 years trying to solve a super complex, expensive problem like a housing crisis when you can just appeal to someone's unchanging identity and get their instant, durable loyalty? The electoral math is just ruthless and incredibly efficient.
Okay, on to lock number two, mass poverty. When your biggest worry every single day is just survival, putting food on the table, a politician's 5-year plan for new infrastructure feels, well, it feels pretty abstract, pretty distant. Your political focus just naturally narrows down to the here and now. What can help me and my family today?
And this creates a political climate where emotional security can actually feel more valuable than long-term material planning. Symbolic gestures, big appeals to group pride, just that feeling of belonging to a powerful, protected group, those things can hit home way harder than some detailed policy paper on sanitation reform ever could.
And that brings us to the third and final lock, weak state capacity. This is just a way of saying that the government itself struggles to reliably deliver the basics. You know, good healthcare, schools, even clean water to all of its citizens. And when failing to deliver becomes a pretty common experience for people, it completely changes the political calculation.
Because when the state can't deliver on performance, politicians have this incredibly powerful pivot they can make. They can basically say, look, I know the roads are bad and the schools aren't great, but hey, at least we represent you. We share your identity. And just like that, identity becomes a substitute, a compensation for competence.
So what happens when you put these three locks together? What kind of political system do you get? Well, the whole incentive structure shifts. it becomes way more profitable to fight over the past than it is to actually build the future. And that choice, that focus on symbolic politics, it comes with a very, very high real-world cost.
Just look at this breakdown. It lays out the cold, hard logic. Fixing future problems like infrastructure or air quality, that's super expensive, it's really difficult, and it requires actual, competence. But fighting over the past, that's cheap. It just requires speeches and symbols and stirring up emotion. One of these builds a country's capacity, but the other one builds votes way more easily.
And look, this isn't just some academic theory. This has real, tangible costs. While all the political oxygen in the room is being sucked up by these symbolic battles, real-world, non-ideological problems just get worse and worse. The air quality gets more toxic, the water tables drop, cities grow without any planning. These are the kinds of failures that affect everybody, but they become politically orphaned because, let's be honest, nobody's out there chanting for better urban planning.
Now, I know it is really easy to look at all of this and feel a sense of judgment or even despair. But it is so important that we place this whole situation in a much wider historical context.
It's tempting to think that Western democracies just kind of woke up one morning and decided, hey, let's do rational politics. But that is not at all how it happened. They had to wade through their own centuries of brutal, bloody, identity-based conflict. We're talking religious wars, sectarian massacres, the whole deal. The shift towards material politics, the kind we see now, that only happened after massive structural changes like industrialization and building strong government institutions had already changed the fundamental incentives of the game.
So, the ruthless conclusion here is this. In an environment shaped by those three locks, birth-based identity, mass poverty, and weak state capacity, a nation is, in effect, making a choice. It might be an unspoken choice, but it's a choice nonetheless. To prioritize the psychological comfort of identity politics over the hard, grinding work of material progress.
So if you're the one listening to this, and you feel alienated by it all, if you're wondering why the political conversation seems so completely detached from solving everyday problems, your frustration is 100% logical. You are seeing the massive gap between what's needed and what's actually being rewarded by the system.
So here's the final verdict. You are not wrong for caring about clean air and good schools and a functioning economy. You are simply ahead of the political curve. The structural incentives of the system just haven't caught up to your perspective yet. You're not wrong. You're just early.